Hey, anatomy. We are moving into our systems part of the class. We're going to start talking about the different systems. This basically takes up the rest of the course. And we're starting with the biggest system we have, which is the integumentary system. So this is our skin system, and it actually includes a lot of mucous membranes. Basically, anywhere where the environment interacts with you, you're going to have a mucus system because mucus, while gross, if you have a cold or something and you don't really want to think about it, mucus is a viscous, sticky substance that traps things that would otherwise harm you. So anytime you have a part of your body interacting with the environment, like your mouth or your nose or your ears or any other orifice, you're going to have a mucus lining to keep your inside safe. So our integumentary system, so our skin and our mucus, makes up 8% of our body weight, making it the largest organ of the body. And you may not think about it, but it is this. Your skin itself is an organ, and it has several factors that we're going to talk about today. It has a lot of functions, so it protects us. It protects our insides. So this is very important. You can be burned. You can burn your skin without hurting your internal organs. It protects us from water loss, and it protects us if you get a bruise. It's better to injure the skin before injuring internal organs. So it may not seem pleasant, but it's actually very good for you. It's also where we interact with our environment tactilely, so using touch. So it's very important that our skin has innervation or nerves so that you can sense your environment around you. There's lots of different kinds. There's the kinds that just detect pressure, so how much you're being touched. There's a kind that detects hot versus cold, and there's a lot. We'll talk a little bit about them. There's a lot of excretion and excretion that happen in the integumentary system. So you don't really think of this being a major excretion organ, but it is. We excrete a lot of toxins through our skin. And temperature regulation is very important when you're talking about the skin. We'll talk a lot about that. We store a lot of fat or a lot of lipids in our skin, and this is also where vitamin D production happens, which is very important. We will talk more about that later. So let's look first at the layers of the skin. So I don't know about you guys, but when I was a kid, there was this insult, quote unquote insult, that kids would use on each other when they were in like third grade. They'd say, "Ew, your epidermis is showing." And supposedly it was very funny. And every third grader thinks it's hilarious. But so what that means is, yeah, your epidermis is the part of your skin that you can actually see, the external side of it. So that's the thinnest layer. That also tends to be mostly dead cells. There's a lot of dead cells anyway. The living part, the next one down, is the dermis, and then below that we have the subcutaneous level. When you get a tattoo, it goes in between the epidermis and the dermis, and that's why it can stay in place without, actually it might be between the dermis and the subcutaneous. Either way, it's basically isolated from either layer, so it doesn't get cleaned up by the rest of the body, basically. So if we look at the dermis again, and this is the idea here is if this is the very top of your skin, there's 5 different layers to the dermis. Sorry, the epidermis. So we have the very top layer, which is the stratum corneum. So there's no blood vessels here. This is how you can scratch your skin, and you can kind of get that flakiness if your skin's really dry, and you're not going to start bleeding, depending if as long as you're not scratching too hard. And so that is that stratum corneum. It's a bunch of really packed cells with no extracellular matrix, so they're not really attached to each other at all, and it's just basically that final layer of protection. So then we have this keratin layer, and we're going to come to keratin a lot. This is a protein that is very, very important. It's used for a lot of structural things in our body. It's in our fingernails, it's in our hair, and it's definitely in our skin. Again, this is another layer of cells that are not alive, and but they are just chock full of keratin, so they're still kind of springy and stretchy. And at the very bottom, we have the stratum basale, which is where we have these regenerating stem cells. And we've talked a little bit about stem cells. So the idea is these are pluripotent stem cells, so they can only become skin cells. So they're either going to become a part of the dermis, so this is the stratum basale, this guy here, and it's either going to, so this will be full of stem cells that'll say, oh no, we need more dermal cells, so they'll make some dermis cells. Or they might think, oh, we've had a major injury that's come straight through here, I better make the cells that'll refill that in. So these stem cells cannot suddenly become a heart cell unless something cancerous happens. They're pluripotent, which means they're already designated on a pathway. They have to become skin cells, but they can become any kind of skin cell. So let's go beyond and we go to the dermis, that's second layer. So this is where our hair and our nail grows, out of here, okay? This is also where sweat glands originate. Sebaceous glands are something that make, well, we're going to see this in a little bit, but this is, so sweat glands just release water and some salts. Sebaceous glands release oil, and it's actually really important for our skin to have some oil to it to keep it supple and stretchy. You think about it, you're moving all the time, you need your skin to be able to move with you. There's also blood vessels here to keep everything oxygenated, take away waste, and to bring food for the cells, and then along with a lot of lymph function. So that's what this lymphatic vessel thing is. That's the immune system. This is very important to have an immune system in the skin because that's, again, what's interacting with the environment a lot. There are a lot of nerve endings. This is how you interact. You know what's happening with your environment, so that's important. Not so great when you hurt yourself, though, so, but that does tell your body, oh, whatever just happened, we should make sure it doesn't happen again. The dermis is made of these irregular connective tissues, and we have what are called dermal papillae, which are going to supply nutrients to the epidermis. So let's see, where are they? We'll get back to it. Basically, so a papillae is just going to be some kind of a vessel that's going to just dump a bunch of sugars into this layer so that the epidermis can, the parts of the epidermis that are alive can continue to stay alive because they're being fed. Alright, so below that is the subcutaneous layer, which is here, and it's almost all fat cells, okay? So there are fat cells and areolar cells, which bind skin to muscle, so basically the glue that keeps your skin attached to your muscle, which is very important, otherwise your skin would be sliding around on top of your muscle, and that just sounds like a horror movie. Excuse me. But we do store a lot of fat here. It helps us with heat retention. Because if your skin is not super thick, the places where your skin is not super thick, like your eyelashes, your eyelids, are going to be losing a lot of heat really easily. If you think about something that is adapted to live in the desert, like an African elephant, they have huge ears. That's a lot of really thin skin, and that helps them regulate their temperature really easily. However, if you have a layer of the subcutaneous fat, you're going to be able to retain whatever heat's coming in through or a lot of the heat coming in through the blood vessels without losing it through the skin. We'll talk more about that soon. So, the skin integumentary system also includes the nails, okay? So this is if this is gross to think about, but just cut straight through a finger and I'm looking through it, okay? So, what are we seeing? We see the nail plate, so this is literally the part that is being pushed out, the luna, okay, or the lunula, okay, which we'll talk about, and then the nail bed is underneath. Okay, so the nail root, you can't see, it's hiding under here, so you can't, as far back, even no matter how far back you pull the skin, your nail bed, your nail root is way down here. You can only see the nail plates. The nail root is the part where the nail stem cells are, and so they're going to become different kinds of cells depending on if they need to become growing cells. So the whatever's here, the white part, those are your cells that are actively growing. Okay, the nail, as this is growing, it's just pushing that nail plate out further, and that's why we have to cut our nails. And the nail there's other kind of cells in here, but we're not going to get into them. You need to just basically know these. The nail plate is going to slide across the nail bed, so the stem cells that are growing inside the nail roots could also become those cells if they need to. But the plate itself is keratinized, so it's and it's hardened. So it's got that protein again, which makes it strong, and it's got some very hardened epidermis. So it's basically the exact same proteins and everything that is in your skin, but in rearranged in a way that make them really hard. So the idea, the thinking is that this used to help us climb trees. It's kind of completely ineffective for that now. So instead, we use it to look pretty. Or yeah, it doesn't really do much else. If you've ever lost a nail, though, you know that the nail bed is incredibly sensitive. And it can, even if you've just cut your nails too short, you know that the nail bed is very, very sensitive because it's never interacting with the environment. And so it doesn't have that chance to develop a really hard, a desensitized epidermis. It's just very, very sensitive instead. So hair is also included in the integumentary system, and just like in the nail, there's a part we don't see, which is the shaft. Whenever you hear like crime shows talking about, oh, we need to get the follicle, a hair with a follicle, so the idea being it's when you pull out a hair and you see the little white part on the end, that's not a follicle. The follicle is the depression in which the root resides. So it's the hole that your hair is growing out of. So whenever they say, we need a follicle, they're wrong. So the follicle is a part around it. The hair papillae is a part where you are actually, that's the part of the hair that's actually interacting with the follicle, and that is where you'll have cells that have um, DNA in them. Let's see what else. Let's see. So the shaft is a part of the hair that you see. It's the, we spend a lot of money trying to make pretty. The root is what's below, so that's going to be below the skin. And whenever you have an ingrown hair, what's happening is that shaft has started to come out, and instead of erupting from the skin, it's doubled back on itself because the top layer of the epidermis has trapped it. The follicle we talked about, the erector pili muscles are really important. So especially in our the cells, or sorry, the hair in the follicles of the hair all over our body, there is a little muscle that can, as soon as that muscle contracts, the hair stands up. And so what used to happen, evolutionarily, other animals, you can think of this, their hair would stand up when they were frightened and they were trying to look really big so maybe something wouldn't eat them, or if they were really cold and if you have a whole lot of hair standing up and you're releasing heat, that hair is going to retain some of that heat a little bit more to keep you warmer. Now, in the case of humans, our hair is not as thick, and so at least not even the hairiest person is not going to be as hairy as a chimpanzee or a polar bear. So our hair isn't as thick, and so you don't see these same effects, but the muscle still does this action. So the erector pili muscle, when it contracts again, our hair stands up. But this is also tied to emotion. So if you hear a story and it just moves you, you get chills. That's what's happening, is this erector pili muscle that has made that hair stand up. Okay. We also it's basically an emotional response in humans more than it is anything else. So this is not what makes us shiver. It's just your hair standing up on end. Okay, each hair also has a sebaceous gland, so that's an oil gland. So in the follicle or near the follicle, there will be a duct that is allowing oil to run down the hair to keep it smoothish. If you have frizzier hair, or if you, depending on what kind of hair you have, you could have an overproduction of sebaceous glands, or of that sebaceous material, so your hair is oily. If your hair is really dry, it's because your sebaceous glands are not releasing a lot. Or it could be that the oil is being washed out really quickly. Okay, so hair is also basically skin. It's epithelium again, made of keratinized cells, but it's just rearranged in a different way. But it's still all the same material that you're seeing in your outer layer of skin. You do have hair stem cells that are hanging out in the root, okay, to say it's time to make some hair. And the whole point of the papilla is just to make sure your hair is being nourished. So a lot of times you see shampoos that say provide the nutrients that your hair really needs. Well, no, the hair, you might be putting it on top of your hair, but your hair isn't actually eating it or anything. The nutrient part is coming from when these cells in the papilla are receiving food from the papilla itself, and then that's going to be laid down in the hair shaft, and then that goes out. So when you do use a different kind of shampoo that says it's going to provide so many nutrients, it's really just applying an oil to your hair to make it more manageable. It's not so much that your hair is eating anything. So let's look at those erector pili muscles again. So there's just a teeny tiny muscle. As soon as it contracts, your hair stands up, okay? We have one for every hair on the body, and it contracts in response to emotion or temperature. So when we're really cold, that will stand up, but we don't retain heat like our animal ancestors do. And that's sebaceous gland again. If this is the follicle that the hair is sitting in, then this is the papillae. The sebaceous gland empties right at where the hair erupts from the skin, and it's considered an exocrine gland, which means it releases into the environment. This usually happens on the back, and so backs tend to be a little more oily. There probably is some evolutionary reason behind this that I just don't know. The oil that comes out of it is called sebum. That's just the technical name. And it protects the hair from getting too dry and brittle. So this is a kind of holocrine gland. What that means is these cells don't just release as they need them. They fill up and they fill up and they fill up and then they burst. And when they burst, that oil is released. We'll talk a little bit more about other glands that release oils in just a few minutes. I'm just kidding, it's just right now. So, not so much oils, but another kind of cell or gland that releases stuff are the sweat glands. And we have two kinds of sweat glands. We have the eccrine sweat glands. This is every single person in the world has these all the time. If you don't have eccrine sweat glands, you actually die. There have been cases where when people in dance troupes or something are trying to figure out a new costume, and there's you use latex of some sort or something that doesn't let your, before latex was invented, something that doesn't let your skin breathe, you actually can die without letting your skin release that sweat glands if you just build up way too many toxins. So it's not that it's breathing, it's not releasing oxygen or releasing carbon dioxide and taking in oxygen that way, but it does keep your water regulated by releasing water, especially when you have too much. Well, sort of, but it definitely is important for releasing heat when you're overheating. Okay, the other thing that sweat glands do is they release water and salt. Okay, they're very numerous. We're not going to worry about apocrine, but oh wait, no, we are. We're going to do that in a second. These are the ones that the only sweat glands that are active in kids are the eccrine glands, and they're important for temperature regulation. This is not sweat that smells. This is not smelly sweat. This is just sweat. Okay. When you're working out at your maximum rate, you can lose up to a gallon of water per hour through these sweat glands. So it's really important if you're working out that you are taking in water also, but you're also losing a whole lot of salt. So you want to balance the water you bring in with salts as well. So again, everyone uses eccrine glands all the time. And they don't mix, the only thing they release is water and salt. That's the important thing. However, apocrine sweat glands, these are the ones that cause BO. These are the sweat glands in your armpit, in your genitals, and in your anal regions. These are not active until puberty hits, so these are activated by hormones, and they're attached to hair follicles, and they're releasing organic molecules like oils and waxes, and they can be activated either during reproductive development or reproductive seasons, or during emotional stress. And this whole thing is this is a pheromone system. So this is, hey, I'm scared, get away from me, or hey, I'm ready to reproduce, don't you think I smell sexy, whatever it is. And what's happening here, this tells other animals information. So if someone says they can smell the fear on you, they're probably lying, because we can't identify what that smells like. We don't know what it is, but we do know that there's definitely something to this this smell. There have been cases where, first of all, we know that dogs, that we can train dogs to smell lung cancer on someone's breath, and yet when they are identifying each other, they put their noses literally on another dog's anal glands to get just the full bouquet of whatever hormones are being released. It's ridiculous in my opinion, but whatever. We actually do this too, but not the same way, obviously. There have been a lot of studies that show if you what they do is they have people rank the smell of someone after they're working out, and then they've determined things like kind of creepy things that so women prefer men that smell like their dads, which is a weird thing to just put out there, but what it really is saying is people identify with other individuals who have similar hormone profiles. And so the idea is you have a bunch of you have people that go and they work out and they get really sweaty and then they give up their t-shirts. And so those t-shirts go to other people in the study who don't know who they're coming from, and then they have to rank them based on how gross they smell. So the one that is the nastiest smelling one is on the bottom of the list. And the one that, well, this isn't so nasty, but it's not great, is going to be at the top of the list. And so then they can say, well, if you don't think it's super nasty, that means there's something about it that makes you less grossed out. Maybe there's something you actually identify with and you don't know what it is. So we know there's something to the idea of pheromones. We haven't been able to identify exactly what makes human pheromones so attractive, because they definitely influence us some way. I know the perfume business would be super excited to know what that secret is, but the pheromones are coming out of these apocrine sweat glands. And the thing is, what's coming out of these apocrine sweat glands, these oils are actually fed upon by bacteria. And when the bacteria then poop, basically when they get rid of their waste, that stinks. So and it's kind of like with your teeth also. So it's not that sugar is bad for your teeth, it's that sugar feeds the bacteria that live on your teeth, and when they get rid of your waste, it ruins your teeth. And so same thing here, bacteria eat the oils that are secreted from these glands that are only active after puberty, And then when they are getting rid of their waste, it smells, and that is BO. Let's see. Yeah, so interesting fun fact about pheromones and oils. If you've ever had a musk smell, so some kind of a perfume that's musk, what you're actually smelling is the pheromones from an animal. Usually it's an ox or a cow or a horse, and the idea is you're smelling the so if you have like a musky cologne, usually what's happening is it's the musk of, so usually well, no, I'm not going to get into super details, but it's just a weird idea that we like these musky smells because it tells another animal that it's time for sexy time. It means you're sexually active. But when we actually are making colognes out of it, we're getting the musk from cows and bulls. I think it's funny. But in either case, that is the sweat that's coming out of apocrine glands, and it's mostly oils and pheromones. On the other hand, remember that the eccrine sweat glands only release water and salt. They are active your entire life, and they don't end up smelling as a result. All right. So if you're on a blind date, your date is really cute, what kind of sweat glands could be activated? Let's say you're not doing any exercise at all. What's activated? Take a second, pause it, answer the question. So if you are on a date and someone is cute, you become emotionally aroused or nervous, then that means your apocrine glands are going to be the ones sweating. If you're doing this while exercising, that means both of them are going to be activated. So the eccrine is just regular sweat. Apocrine is the more oily, smelly sweat. Sebaceous is just a kind of secretion gland. That's not a specific kind of sweat gland. Okay, when else do you sweat? You sweat during temperature regulation. If you're really hot, your body starts to get rid of that hot water. But think about it, it's not just good enough to release that those heated molecules as water. You also need to have some kind of wind or air motion over it. Otherwise, you're just covered in hot water. So think about when it's really, really hot, it's nice to have a breeze going over you, because what that breeze does is it picks up and removes those really, really hot molecules. So the evolutionary advantage to sweat is that, number one, it keeps us, we can use it for temperature regulation, and number two, we can use it to identify if someone is in what mating state someone is in or emotional state. So this is the idea where if you've ever known someone or had been on birth control, or the birth control pill, and you know that your lady friends are all synced up so that they're all having their period at the same time. Well, it's not like it's because you all start your birth control. Actually, it doesn't have to be on birth control. It's not that you all decide, today, let's all have our period today. That doesn't work. That would be too convenient. So what's happening instead is that whoever is releasing the most pheromones into the air, because they have just the most dominant system, those pheromones are then taken in and smelled in somebody else, which then influences when they are, or what their body's going to do. And that's happening through that apocrine gland again. All right, so why do we sweat? What are some other reasons to sweat? We do this to cool off. We do this, so again, we have that really hot water, or those hotter molecules get moved to your skin when you're really hot, and then released from your skin. Okay. We also, it's another really important reason that you have to sweat is because you're going to dilute harmful chemicals that are on your skin. So if you come into contact with something nasty, your sweat is going to dilute it. And it also kills bacteria that are on your skin. So our skin is our number one way to protect ourselves from bacteria, because it's literally just a barrier. And also we release this chemical warfare basically in our sweat that kills that bacteria. Again, and one extra thing is literally if you're sweating, you're pushing the bacteria off of you. Okay, and like we said, the apocrine glands act as chemical messengers. The reason why, and this actually isn't this lie detector thing, the way lie detecting works is because you detect a change in how salty you are. So you put that lie detector on. If you start lying, you tend to sweat more. Okay, so that's someone who's a bad liar gets nervous and then they start sweating more. And if you're sweating more, your skin becomes more salty. Remember that if it's happening because of an emotional response, it must be happening through the apocrine gland. But what's the problem with this? The problem with this is if you're really good at lying, so you don't even think you're lying, or if you just have the belief that something is true when it's not, and that's literally your truth, then you can totally fake a lie detector test. Like if you are just good at controlling when you sweat, basically, or you control your emotional response to something, then you're going to be able to defeat a lie detector test. And that's why lie detector tests are not admissible in court, because they're so easily beaten. Okay, so the idea of our sweating system is a very good example of homeostasis in our body. So homeostasis is the need for our body to keep everything regulated in a certain way, and it's kind of like it works kind of like how an air conditioner works, or an air conditioning system, where if it's too hot, well then you better cool down. And one way you can do that is by sweating. And then if it's too cold, okay, so all of a sudden you were hot, you started sweating, whatever was making you hot went away to the point you start to get really cold, you start shivering. And when you shiver, when your muscles start to contract a lot, your body's going to start warming up, and that's going to cool your body. Okay? So when you're shivering, it warms you up. And then when you're done shivering and you stop that, your body can cool down. And those two systems work together to make sure you're always either keeping yourself cooler or keeping yourself warmer so that you're basically maintaining that 98.7 average temperature. Just to kind of give you, if you want more detail, another way besides just shivering that is going to, or shivering or sweating is going to keep you warm or cold. If you're really cold, we tend to curl up into little balls. If you're like, it's a cold winter day and you get in bed, you curl up. Whereas when you're really hot, you want to stretch out because your muscles, you're giving yourself more surface area to get rid of that temperature, okay? So we talk about sweating, the piloerection versus piloerelaxation. So when you're cold, your hair stands straight up because it's going to trap more hot air that's coming off of your skin. Whereas when you're hot, your hairs get really flat because they're trying to allow more space for heat to leave your body. So the flatter your hair is, the less room the heat has to go through in order to leave you. And then this vasoconstriction, vasodilation is easy to think about if you think about hypothermia. So if someone has extreme hypothermia, you lose circulation to the extreme parts of your body, your extremities. So if you are trapped on a mountain in the cold and you're so far up in the mountain and it's snowing and there's no, and oh my god, you're so cold, your body says, you know what, I really need to protect my core right now and my brain, because I can survive without a finger or two, but I can't survive without my brain. So it shuts off the capillaries, allowing blood to go to your extremities, and that's how people lose toes and fingers or their nose because it's so cold. On the other hand, if it's really, really hot, you start to vasodilate, so you open up all your arteries, or your capillaries in your skin, and you move blood away from your core to your skin so it can start to get rid of heat. So this again is where I think about elephants. So the African elephants have the giant ears, and the reason why is because they can, if it's really, really hot, they can run more blood through their ears, and there's such thin skin that that really hot blood is close to the surface, and that heat can dissipate really easily. Animals that live in places that are really, really cold, if we're thinking about ears, they have really, really little ears, because that means there's less area for them to lose heat through their ears. Or they're just really fuzzy and adorable, like Arctic foxes. Okay, let's talk about the most controversial thing about skin, which is ridiculous, and that is skin color. So the idea that somebody can be judged based on literally just how much melanin is in your skin has been a problem for humans all of human history. We won't get into the politics, but let's just talk about what causes or influences skin color. So this happens in the epidermis, so that very upper layer of cells. We have these other skin cells that grow out these little finger-like projections, and they're all kind of connected to the other cells, and these are called melanocytes. So they're cells that make melanin, and melanin is a protein, okay? So that when the melanocyte is making protein, it leaks it out, or it loses it through diffusion, and that goes and gets into other cells, okay? By the melanocyte putting pigment into other cells, you get darker skin. This happens, and this is really important because what melanin does is it shades our DNA. So it happens on top of the skin, or on top of the cell, so that the nucleus is below it. And you have this basically an umbrella system, so that when the sunlight is coming in, it bounces or it absorbs into the melanin instead of being absorbed into the nucleus. And this is really important because UV rays will damage the nucleus, or damage DNA molecules, and cause mutations that can lead to cancer really easily. And it can happen to anyone, but it's more likely to happen to people who have light-colored skin because they don't have that protection factor. We'll talk about this in a second. You also skin color can also be affected by genetics. If you're, we'll talk about some examples of this. Skin color can change with age. I have a very frustrating darkened part right above my lip now that makes it look like I have an annoying mustache. That's an age thing. Hooray, aging. And UV light can also, we know this by if you tan, what you're doing is you're stimulating that melanocyte to say, oh no, there's more light than I thought there would be. I should make the skin darker to protect the DNA. The genetics is obviously a big part of that is race and genetic heritage. So, why even have melanin? Why not? There's actually a reason why we see this continuum in skin color, okay? So there's a reason why you can have people, and this is not considering things like albinism where you just have a complete loss of color, or, oh my gosh, leucistic things where you have a little bit of color but not too much. I just saw something about a leucistic giraffe recently, so you don't see leucism in humans as much, but the idea is you have the loss of most pigment, but not all. But in this case, why do we have a continuum of skin color? There's actually a very important reason, and it has to do with where you're from on the earth, or where your ancestors evolved on the earth. If you are evolving up near the poles, where the quality of sunlight that comes in at the poles is really, really poor, you don't get a lot of direct sunlight. And there's actually something really important about that. Vitamin D is created when you're exposed to sunlight. And so it's a weird thing that happens, but for some reason we have to have that solar power to make vitamin D. And if we don't have vitamin D, we get rickets. And what rickets is where you don't get, your bones won't be created properly, and you get weaker bones, and your legs start to bow out, and you can actually break them by doing barely anything. So it's very important that we have sunlight to activate vitamin D so our bones will set properly. Now, we get in a lot of vitamin D if you take in dairy products. It's also, so you see a lot of dairy products that are fortified with vitamin D. So you'll have vitamin D milk, for example. It's in a lot of cheeses. It comes naturally in a lot of fish, and we also see it in a lot of cereals. Okay, but what about all that? So that's if you have, you have to have some sort of transparency to your skin, or some kind of, if you live someplace that receives almost no light, that's really important, or very, very weak light. You have to have light skin so you can take in as much sunlight as possible in order to make vitamin D. But what if you come from somewhere that's near near the equator, where you're getting tons and tons of sunlight all the time? Well, you're going to get plenty of vitamin D. It's going to be okay. But the thing you're more worried about is, am I going to get skin cancer as a result? And so the body has to balance the amount of sunlight coming in to allow vitamin D and the amount of sunlight being blocked so that skin cancer isn't as present. So you see a very clear correlation between people whose ancestors evolved at the poles and being worried about not being able to form bones, and people whose ancestors evolved at the equator and worrying about getting too much solar radiation and getting a lot of skin cancer. So we see this continuum of skin color, and there's actually even more. So I will warn you now, some gross pictures are happening because anatomy is fun. So let's talk about some pathologies of the skin. So a sunburn could be as simple as you just forgot to wear sunscreen and your skin turned really pink. But there can be a point where you actually start boiling, and you could even, well, this is a regular burn. So if you don't want to see it, cover it up. But a sunburn is where the skin cells start to be inflamed. Okay, so the immune cells are reacting so much to the amount of UV radiation coming in that they become inflamed because for some reason the UV light is just irritating it. Okay. The first step after being exposed to a burn is just redness. The next step is blistering, because you're creating so much irritation in the immune cells, they start to fill up with pus, and so you get this big thing. So this is a first degree burn. Okay, so sunburns can give you a first and perhaps second degree burn. But if you have a burn caused by fire or acid or something, this is going to go even further. This is, again, it's not your body causing this problem itself. It's some external force that's happened. A first degree burn is just going to hit the epidermis, and it might make you red. So this is definitely a first degree burn. A second degree burn is where the epidermis is completely destroyed, and you suddenly have the dermis being damaged and perhaps blistering. A third degree burn is the epidermis and the dermis have been completely destroyed, and then everything underneath it such as the sub, what is it called, the layer that's where the lipids has been damaged also, and the skin's protective function is completely gone. So that and if you think about it, that kind of, I don't want to just keep on that, but that kind of damage, your nerves are exposed the entire time. There's no protection to your nerves. So burn units in hospitals are a very sad place because there's no way to relieve that pain while you're awake. And so it's just very important to be really careful about burns. Okay, so another thing to be careful about is skin cancer. So the first two pathologies were sunburns and regular burns. So there are over 1 million new cases of skin cancer every year. So there is there's what's called a cutaneous sarcoma. So what's happening is whenever UV light comes in, there's certain pairings in the DNA that's really easy for UV light to come in and kind of squish together, and that doesn't then the DNA can't be read properly, and for some reason, as we remember, you're either if this happens in a cancerous suppressor cell, then they're more likely to get cancer. If it mutates any other sorry, I said cancer suppressor cell. I meant cancer suppressing gene. You've lost a protective factor there. You could also just mutate another gene so that suddenly it causes the cell to reproduce excessively, and that is also a cancer. The problem with these cancers is there's a point where they become unmoored from wherever they are sitting, and they become malignant, and they get into the bloodstream, and they can start growing in all sorts of other places. So a subcutaneous carcinoma is going to be this is a squamous or basal cell that starts to become it grows out of control. So cancer is just any uncontrolled cell growth. You could have a cutaneous melanoma, which is in the skin. A melanoma is going to be that really darkening. It becomes really, so a carcinoma is kind of a tumor. A melanoma is that very, very big dark spot. This is where you have to watch your moles all the time to make sure they're not growing. A xeroderma pigmentosa is, it's a genetic predisposition so that your DNA doesn't fix itself, because it's actually really hard to get cancer because your body's always checking to make sure it doesn't get it. But if you're genetically predisposed to cancer, it could be that your body is not checking to make sure it doesn't get it, and so you're more likely to end up with cancer that way. Oh yeah, here we go. Whew. Let's talk about some microbial infections, so there are things that are always basically the rest of the universe is always trying to attack us because we are full of delicious proteins and carbohydrates and everything, and so why wouldn't a bacteria want to come in and try to eat us all the time? So acne is the bacterial infections of a sebaceous gland, so those oil glands. Remember, bacteria love eating oil, so what they do is they get into that sebaceous gland, they start to reproduce like crazy, and then our body tries really hard to make sure that they die by creating that pimple around it. So a fungal infection, there's two different kinds of fungal infections that are really prevalent in humans. We have ringworm, which is where it's called ringworm because people didn't know any better, but it's a fungus that spreads out in this circular pathway. You just have to take antifungals. And then athlete's foot, which is a fungus that we get from not cleaning our shoes often enough. It lives in old, smelly, sweaty shoes. I've heard wrestlers get this a lot of times on their faces, actually, because they are rolling around on mats all the time. So that's problematic. Again, you take an antifungal, clean your shoes a lot more, and you'll be okay. Impetigo is caused by a couple different bacterias, and it looks like a cold sore, and it's just this big. You just have to wash it, be careful with it, and it'll go away eventually. And warts are interesting because they're actually caused by a viral infection, and usually once you have warts, you have them. The virus is in you for the rest of your life, and it's just kind of, they might cause more warts, they might not. So there's all these weird tales about, to get rid of a wart, you take a potato and you cut it in half and you rub it on a frog and then you eat it. No, none of that's true. And you also cannot get warts from frogs or toads because they don't actually have warts, they just have bumps on their skin, whereas warts in humans are literally caused by a virus causing these big spots. They can be painful though, so sometimes people have warts removed by doctors. So there are a lot of color abnormalities in skin, and again, this becomes problematic because people are so ridiculous about racism because of literally just the amount of melanin that you have in your skin. So albinism is a genetic disorder where you just don't make the melanin proteins, okay? So you don't make it in the skin, and you also don't make any proteins in your hair that are different colors. So that's the one I think people are most familiar with. An albino, somebody who has albinism, has no skin pigmentation. Excuse me, if you have keratinosis, that's where you actually literally overdose on carrots. So what makes carrots orange, if you are drinking way too many smoothies that have carrot juice, that actually can get stuck in your skin and turn you slightly orange. It's really a thing. It is not harmful at all, but you can be slightly orange. Okay, so the things that could be bad are cyanosis. So cyanosis is where your skin starts to turn blue because you're not taking in enough oxygen. So this is when someone is choking, if they turn blue, that's cyanosis. Now, that can kill you, so this is definitely not something that is long-term. Sometimes you see it in people who have circulation problems. Their skin will have a blue tinge to it, but that is not... yeah, that's something that definitely causes a lot of alarm in medical facilities. So when babies are born, sometimes they're given a jaundice or a cyanosis scale. So if they're born and they need air quickly, they could be slightly blue. If they're born and they're kind of yellow, that means their liver's still trying to figure out how to function. If you have jaundice when you're later in life, like this gentleman does, that means your liver is really dysfunctioning and you're starting to build up bile in other parts of your body. So the liver makes a lot of bile. It's what breaks down fats in our food. It's not good for you to have in other places. So that bile, if it's backing up in your bloodstream, it's going through your liver, it starts getting deposited in your skin. That's a really bad sign of liver dysfunction. Vitiligo, and this is something you see, once you know what it is, you'll start seeing and noticing people that have it. It's not okay to then just run up to them and be like, you have vitiligo, that's so cool, because that's weird. Don't do it, it's not polite. But what vitiligo is where your body has decided that your melanocytes are dangerous cells and it needs to kill them. And it's a weird situation where all of a sudden part of your skin, it's not weird, it's actually a cool thing, but it's only harmful in that you're more likely to get skin cancer because of the UV radiation. But the idea is so these parts of the skin should have melanin, but for some reason the immune cells that went by were like, no, that's dangerous, get rid of it, and then just got rid of the melanocyte. And if you don't have the melanocyte, you're not making melanin to then color the skin. That's all it is. We're not going to worry about that, but here are some good questions to kind of think of. So if you have greasy hair, what kind of gland is overactive? So greasy hair means that there's oil. If there's oil, that's coming from a sebaceous gland. If you're really, really nervous, I guess you could think, so apocrine glands are those sweat glands that also release oil. Usually, though, if your hair is greasy, that's because of sebaceous glands on the end of the hairs. If a little kid is running around and gets all sweaty, what glands are working? That's your eccrine glands. So everybody has eccrine sweat glands. Those are the ones that are just always releasing salt and water to keep your temperature regulated. This is actually, I meant to change this. I grew up in Texas, but whatever. Let's pretend I grew up in Southern California and then I moved to the UK. What health problems might I have to worry about? So if I grew up in an environment with lots and lots of sunlight, and then I moved to a place where there's not a lot of sunlight, what do I have to worry about? So in the case of living someplace where there's lots of sun and it's really hot, you may have behavioral modifications or genetic changes that cause you to avoid being outside and avoid the sun because you're worried about getting sunburns and getting cancer. And then suddenly you move someplace where it's always raining, it's always really dark, etc. I don't know a lot about the UK, except that's kind of the stereotype. There's not a lot of sunlight. And suddenly you have to worry about what? Oh, you have to worry about vitamin D production. So if you don't get enough UV light, you might have to start worrying about vitamin D production. Another thing is we know that there's something emotional about not getting enough sunlight. If you don't get enough natural light, you can get seasonal affective disorder or a seasonal depression. We can see that from people who live in the Pacific Northwest they talk a lot about how in the winter they get depressed because they don't see the sun very much. Okay, so if we go the opposite way, we have somebody who is from Norway, and their family, they have ancestry in Norway, so they're incredibly pale. And then they move to California. What is the first thing you want to tell them? Or if you have friends that come visit California from someplace like, I I don't know, someplace where there's not a lot of sunlight or it's just rainy all the time or whatever, and here it's really sunny all the time, what do you have to worry about? Well, they're probably going to get sunburned really easily because they don't have enough melanin built up in their skin. If they're originally very, very pale and they come someplace where suddenly they have to worry about sun, you want to make sure that they put on sunscreen to protect their skin both from sunburns and from UV mutations leading to cancers. Okay, so hopefully this helped and helped you kind of figure out how to think about the integumentary system, and I will see you later. Bye.